And now we've reached my top 3 favorite engines of the Steam team. I think these 3 have, like, the least amount of, like, flanderization to them in the Andrew Brenner era, which is definitely a big plus for me. Like, I'm so glad they brought these engines back to normal. Now, I think some people might still, like, say that they aren't 100% perfect, and I understand that, but I still love them nonetheless. We have Edward, Thomas, and Emily. So, now there's no really particular order from who my favorite to favorite is. Like, y'all probably know who my favorite characters are. Thomas and Edward. These two have always been my favorites ever since childhood. And I think Emily was actually the first female steam engine who I actually fell in love with. In a sense. Like, don't we all, like, have, like, one childhood crush in our lives? Like, have you ever seen those videos on YouTube where people talk about their childhood crushes? That's not the subject for today. Like, we're just talking about the Steam team. Alright, so I think we'll start off with Emily here. Like, as much as I love Thomas and Edward, I'm just going to talk about Emily. Now, I've already mentioned, like, Emily plenty of times on my YouTube channel before. I really love Emily as a character. She's definitely one of my favorites. And definitely one of my favorite Season 7. Sorry if I'm getting mixed up, but I'm a huge fan of Season 7. I love Emily's introductions. I think Emily had a great character arc in Season 7. And as you probably know, Emily turned into an entitled Karen from Season 8 onwards, from Season 8 to 16. Being bossy and rude, condescending towards other engines, always telling them to hurry up because they're slow or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is with people taking certain TV show characters and just making them, like, contradictory to who they are. Especially in female characters' cases where they start off as sweet and kind, but being arrogant and rude. I think a lot of people might probably theorize saying that they based Emily off of James and Gordon, because think about it. Gordon and James are both pompous and arrogant, so that's probably why they made Emily act like this. Now, I think the real reason, like, why they actually did turn Emily into a bossy jerk is because they actually based her off of Lucy from the Peanuts comics. And TV show as well. Yeah. Now, I don't get why they did this. Like, Emily and Lucy are two different people. Like, it would be one thing if they gave Lucy an actual character development in Peanuts where she goes from being bossy and arrogant to being, like, more kind to other people. Like, she's always, like, being rude to Charlie Brown, always calling him a blockhead. And always, like, there's this, like, one running joke where she pulls the football away from him. Well, yes, it is funny. Sometimes it can be a little repetitive. But in Emily's case, I think that just makes her even, like, worse. Because, like, Emily normally doesn't act this rude to everyone. And I think this is the reason why people hate Emily. Because of the hit era. Now, if you do hate Emily, I respect your opinion. And for the fact that she replaced Duck. But I still really love Emily for her caring and kind nature in Season 7. Yes, it sucks that Emily got butchered and assassinated, but I still love her. Like, I'm not going to let the hit era just, like, change my opinions on Emily. I don't care if she acted bossy. I still love her nonetheless because of her, like, Season 7 character. I'm sorry, I'm just, like, every time I think about Season 8 through 16 Emily, I just want to scream in anger. Because I really hate what they did to her. And I don't get why they would base her off of Lucy from Peanuts. If you want to make Emily a more interesting character, then don't make her unlikable. Don't just make her hated by people. Like, the whole point about certain TV shows is that they make characters that people can grow attached to and get related to. But if you make them, like, annoying and rude, people are just going to hate them. Like, for example, look at Caillou. He's the most hated childhood cartoon character because, like, all he does is throw a tantrum when he doesn't get his way and his parents don't punish him. Or, like, yeah, I'm sure there are, like, a lot of other shows that have suffered the same problem that Thomas and Friends has, from character flanderization to making unlikable characters. Yeah, I forgot to pull up CGI Emily because, like, I'm sure there's still moments where she did act rude to other engines. Unlike in Hero of the Rails, because, like, I can understand why she's rude to Spencer, because, like, he's just spying on Thomas when he's not supposed to. Because he's, like, supposed to work on the summer house. But, yeah, ignore that noise in the background. Yeah. Okay, so now in season 17 onwards, they actually did give Emily back her old personality, being so kind and sweet to other engines. Now, I think there's one thing that people are going to complain about with Emily in the CGI series. So, I think one problem that people have is that in Emily's best friend, Emily's just being desperate and wanting a best friend, which was never really an issue for her. And the fact that Emily doesn't have any flaws. Okay, if Emily has no flaws, would she still be sad or angry? I don't think so. I don't count engine with no flaws if they're upset or angry. Basically, being flawless is being happy all the time and, like, being overpowered and being so perfect at everything. Yeah. Listen, Emily may not have any flaws, but she's still better than Rey Skywalker from Star Wars. Yeah. Can we all talk about, like, how The Rise of Skywalker ruined everything for that trilogy? And how the sequel trilogy basically just ruined everything. But yeah, I don't even know why I'm talking about that. I'm not even that big of a fan of Star Wars, if I'm being honest. But if you like that, I respect your opinion. Alright, back to Emily. So, while yes, I understand Emily isn't perfect, even if she still isn't in, like, the ARC era, I still actually am happy that she no longer acts like an entitled Karen. Because that just makes her even, like, less likable. But I still love her. Now, I will say that she has a pretty cute CGI face. Like, I think out of everyone's CGI face, I love Emily's the most. Like, I feel like my other problem with the other CGI faces is that they lack all that detail that the classic charming model series faces had. Now, I understand most people might call this old faces creepy, but I don't really think they're that creepy in my opinion. They're certainly not, like, as, like, cursed as the Underground Ernie, like, characters. That's my second reference to Underground Ernie. Can you believe that? Anyways. Yeah. I also think Emily has a pretty cute design. Like, I love Stirling singles. They're some of my favorite locomotives. Especially with that big drive wheel. Now, what I will say is that I'm not a fan of the fact that they gave Emily silver buffers. Like, I don't know what was wrong with her bronze buffers. I feel like that's just one small change, but I think things just got worse when Emily gained her number 12. Now, if you like the fact that Emily has a number now, I respect your opinion, but I feel like Emily was perfect the way she was. Especially with that cute little face she has. Along with Rosie. Anyways, yeah, that's Emily for you. I still love her. And if you hate her, I respect your opinion. But just note that Emily did go back to her old personality in season 17 onwards, and she's no longer bossy. Like, I don't hate Emily just because she's a bossy, entitled Karen. I love her because she was back to how she was in the ARC era, and they got rid of her bossy personality. So, like, Andrew Brenner, if you just so happen to be watching this, thank you for giving Emily back her old personality. And thank you for bringing back the classic Thomas and Friends writing. Now, if you're not a big fan of the Andrew Brenner era, I respect your opinion. But I actually like it. Alright, now the big two. Starting off with... we'll save the main character for last because he's the star of the show. But here's Edward, the Blue Engine. Now, while I do admit Edward, like, doesn't really have that much to his character personality in the later seasons, like, I still really like him. So I think the reason, like, why people, like, aren't a big fan of how Edward was handled, like, was because Edward used to be, like, this old engine in season 1, but, and the other engines, like, were all bigger than Edward and boasted about it too, but they didn't always call him old all the time, I don't think. Like, they probably did, but Edward just, like, overcame his, like, insecurities of being old, and everyone gained his respect. At least in seasons 1 through 2. Like, I think Edward's exploit is the final straw that broke Edward's back, because, like, while yes, I do like the fact that everyone gains Edward's respect at the end, where Edward, like, proves, like, he's not, like, afraid to, like, let a little, like, inconvenience, like, he's not, like, afraid to, like, let his side rods, like, ruin his chances of getting the passengers home. He still pulls the train, even with one side rod. How impressive is that? Like, Edward's an absolute Chad for that. And then the big engines like Gordon gain his respect. However, I think the problem that people did have in Edward from season 6 onwards is that they just, like, regressed all of that and just made all the engines, like, call him old and have Edward, like, just be insecure about himself, and, like, they basically just turned Edward into a misfit. However, I think Edward only got worse because, like, he was rude to Rocky for whatever reason, and Edward strikes out, which is insulting to Edward's character because he's not normally this mean to everyone. Like, okay, one thing I hate about certain shows is that when every single character is a jerk to each other, and they don't, like, even learn their lessons in most episodes at the end. Like, take a look at Family Guy, for example. Or, like, what about the newer SML movies? As much as I love SML, there are some, like, moments that are filler, which is why most people aren't a fan of, like, the show anymore. But yeah. And basically, Edward just stayed the same. Like, he still acts old. He still feels a little weak in some episodes. And people still, like, disrespect him, especially Gordon. And I think Edward only got worse when he moved to Wellsworth and he was replaced with Nia. Like, this is just an insult. Audrey basically made Edward as his very first engine. So, the fact that you take a character who has created, one who has left a long-lasting impression on Tom's friends, and you just replace him with a female character is just rude. Like, I don't know, like, what was wrong with Edward. Like, I don't think there was, like, anyone who ever said that they hated Edward as a character. Like, I just think Edward's underrated. And if you think that Edward isn't perfect, I respect your opinion. But still, I think Edward has another great design and an amazing face. And while I do think Keith Wickham does a good job of Edward, I do like William Hope's voice. Even though it doesn't fit Edward that well, I still like it. Alright, now we have the last engine. And as you all know, he's the main character of the show. Thomas the Tank Engine. Now, I bet some of you were probably wondering, why didn't I put Thomas lower on this list? Because, like, didn't Thomas also suffer a significant amount of damage? Well, yes, he did, but that doesn't mean that I hate him. So, yeah. For those of you who, like, actually not watch the show, Thomas basically used to be a cheeky little arrogant engine who loves to play tricks on the other engines, the bigger engines at least. And for whatever reason, he's rude to every new engine he meets. However, in season 1 through 5, he basically went from being cheeky to being more mature and, like, polite to other engines. Like, I think only in, like, season 8 onwards, they turn him into an idiot. Like, an actual idiot. Like, he doesn't understand what certain things mean. Again, he's rude to every new engine he meets. He always brags on how he can do everything on his own, only to, like, cause problems for him. Like, when he gets too sleepy and he mixes everything up. Or, like, the time where he breaks his side rods pulling the circus train. Or, like, being prejudiced towards diesel engines like in Misty Island Rescue. And the list just goes on and on for how stupid Thomas acts throughout the rest of the show. However, I still think that Thomas does have a lot of great moments in the ARC era. Like, sure, he, like, may act a little stupid sometimes, but, like, I don't think he was all that bad. Like, he was still kind to his friends. He still wanted to prove that he was really useful, and he didn't put himself over others. Like, in Sora's Legend of the Lost Treasure, he's the one who discovers the pirate ship. And he's the one who helped Sailor John, even though he turned against him. And he even rescued Ryan from dying. Like, if Thomas hadn't saved Ryan, he would have, like, exploded and then we wouldn't see him again. Like, that's pretty heroic of Thomas. Yes, there are other moments that I don't like. When he just exposes Luke in front of all the narrow gauge engines, which is pretty dumb of him. Like, Yes, he told his friends about Hero, but they didn't get angry at him. They all wanted to help restore him. Like, I think Thomas is pretty mixed. Like, he has a pretty mixed personality, where sometimes he's very caring and understanding, but while still being a little cheeky engine, like pulling pranks on his friends and stuff, and being rude and snarky. But I still really like Thomas. Like, I think he had a great development in episodes 1 through 7, and I think the Trampy movies are some of my favorite pieces of fan-made Thomas content. Because I just think they make them more funnier, and like, especially when he starts yelling at the top of his lungs. Especially in that new episode where Thomas just like yells at the policeman. I just think that made that more funnier. But yeah. Alright, so that was the Steam team, both old and new. So yeah. And like Leo Kim Video said, give us back the old faces. Alright, so thanks for watching. I know this was 3 parts long, but I just like had a lot to talk about. Now the Steam team don't really have that much depth to them, but at least most of them aren't one-dimensional. Now you could probably like say that the Andrew Brenner series is not flawless, and I understand that. I know it's not flawless. I will admit there are some things that I don't like about it. Mainly how Henry, Toby, and Percy were handled. However, I think at least like about 5 engines of them stay consistent. Like Gordon still acts a bit grumpy, James acts boastful, Edward still like has a little bit of insecurities about himself being old, Thomas still acts rude and cheeky while still being mature sometimes, and Emily like no longer is bossy. Now, I want to know what your opinions were on how the Steam team was handled in the CGI series. Do you think they got better, or do you think they got worse? Anyways, if you're wondering what my next Bluebird Thomas review is, I'm going to like try to do a review on the 3 OCs I've made. I'm sure you know like if you saw my community post about them, but I want to make this very special. At some point, I will go back and remake all my older Bluebird Thomas reviews I've done so far. And we'll just see how it goes from there. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!